Welcome back to The Lead. I'm Jake Tapper. Continuing our top story today, the shocking, controversial, and long-anticipated report on the CIA's use of torture. Well, that report has been publicly released, reigniting not only the debate over the morality of torture, but its effectiveness. Whether, for instance, it saved American lives, whether it helped the U.S. capture and kill Osama bin Laden. Former Bush administration officials, including Vice President Dick Cheney, have argued that the CIA's enhanced interrogation program, or what is commonly referred to as torture, helped them interrupt terror plots, gain a valuable understanding of al-Qaeda, and led them to bin Laden's hideout in Abbottabad, Pakistan. Senator Dianne Feinstein, chair of the Intelligence Committee, Democrat from California, blasted the CIA today for overstating the importance of the techniques and fighting the war on terror.
At no time did the CIA's coercive interrogation techniques lead to the collection of intelligence on an imminent threat that many believe was the justification for the use of these techniques. The committee never found an example of this hypothetical ticking time bomb scenario.
The CIA disagrees strongly with that. Let's bring in former CIA officers Bob Baer and Reuel Marc Gerecht. Gentlemen, let's set aside for the purposes of our discussion the morality of torture here. I want to discuss whether or not it was effective, because this Democratic Senate report says no. What do you say, Bob?
I see no evidence that it was effective. Abbottabad, the raid on bin Laden's compound, was multiple sources. It wasn't due to hostile interrogations. The Senate has gone through, and this has been bipartisan as well, has gone through the record and seen no evidence that it stopped an imminent threat against the United States. It just, and if it has, I think it's time for the CIA to produce that evidence to tell us why torture works.
Reuel, the Republicans issued a minority report today, and they challenged the Democratic assumptions very, very strongly, saying, for instance, there was a plot to destroy hotels in Karachi, and interrogation of one of the detainees, torture of one of the detainees, led to information that led them to foil this plot. What do you say?
Well, I don't know. I think we have to look at the intelligence. I really don't think we can have this debate with our hands tied behind our back. You'd have to look at the intelligence produced through enhanced techniques. You'd have to look at other intelligence produced. You'd have to put them together. You'd have to have a chronology of it. And then you'd see now, senior CIA officers are always prone to defend their product. I mean, that's beyond a shadow of a doubt. But I'm somewhat skeptical that these efforts produced as little intelligence as Senator Feinstein has suggested, but there really is no way to know how productive they were, how many lives they saved, if any, unless you get to see that intel and really work through it.
Now, as I said, the CIA strongly disputes the report's conclusions. They accuse the committee of reaching the conclusions by working backwards. They said almost as if it's like getting Wednesday's answers to the crossword puzzle and then figuring out what you could see in Tuesdays. A CIA spokesman put it as a what-if approach that's highly speculative, does not accurately reflect how counterterrorism operations work in the real world. Now, Bob, let me ask you, do you know of times back when you were with the CIA where enhanced interrogation techniques produced actionable intelligence?
Well, let me just first say I totally agree with Reuel. We'd have to see the intelligence. You'd have to see it line by line. He's absolutely right. And yes, I have seen cases where torture was used, and was the first embassy bombing in Beirut in 1983. And the report that the Lebanese were produced from torture was abysmal. They didn't get one thing right. It misled us, forced us to close our embassy in Lebanon and leave. It was junk. It was produced by torture. And every other intelligence service in the Middle East and South America that uses systemic torture has very bad intelligence. And that's been my experience over 20 years.
Well, and Reuel, that's an argument that we heard today from Senator John McCain, a Republican from Arizona, who was in a Vietnamese POW camp for 5.5 years, was tortured himself. He made the argument that torture produces false information.
Well, false information can come from any type of interrogation. I don't think enhanced techniques are about whether it's likely to produce more truthful intelligence than, say, one where you're just trying to mentally coerce or have someone essentially, voluntarily give you everything they've got. You want to get people talking. After that, you use different methods to try to verify the information. Now, I have to say, historically, there's a pretty strong argument that pain matters. I think the real debate in the United States is not whether pain is effective in gathering up intelligence. I think historically the argument there is yes. In the past, if agents were compromised, if soldiers were taken hostage, you would assume that everything was blown because they would be tortured. Different levels of pain would be used and people would crack. So I think the argument is the types of techniques that they used. Are they morally acceptable to us? Or no, they're not. I think that's really probably a better historical argument. Now, it's entirely possible that the way the agency conducted itself produced limited information. That may be because the information wasn't there to be had. It may be because they did it in a sloppy manner. It may be because they had bad officers doing the work. I mean, these are lots of unknowns and variables. That's why you need to look at the intelligence. You need to assess it.
And Bob, let me ask you, going forward, what does the CIA still do? President Obama has said that publicly the U.S. does not torture. We still do extraordinary rendition, though, right, which is basically outsourcing torture?
We do, and so does the military as well. This isn't a CIA problem. This is an American government problem. It's a policy problem, and I don't think the CIA is a rogue agency that struck out on its own. It may not have given all the details to Congress and the White House, but that's sort of par for the course. But this was a decision made in the White House in 2001. And what we need to do is go back and examine that and see what we got out of this very aggressive foreign policy, whether they're worse off today or better off. And frankly, I just still do not see the point of torture. The Chinese used waterboarding, the North Koreans did, but it was to get false confessions out of our soldiers. But even the SEALs don't use waterboarding for confessions. They use it to break people in their practice sessions. And we really need to look at this. And the CIA, don't forget, outsourced waterboarding to 2 contractors in Washington State who knew nothing about it. And so we just did this on the run, and it shows.
All right, Bob Baer and Reuel, Marc, Gerecht, thank you so much. Appreciate it.